It's time for a special interview here on Morning Wave in Busan. Every year on June 12th, the World Day Against Child Labor is observed to raise awareness of the plight of child laborers worldwide. Hundreds of millions of girls and boys around the world are affected. And so let's find out more about this with Davina Hagan, who is Save the Person, a spokesperson for Save the Children. Hi, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yes. So today is June 12th, at least here in Korea. So, of course, this is a day that really focuses on child labor. So first, can you help us define what exactly child labor is and why this day is meaningful?
Yes, absolutely. So the World Day Against Child Labour is really important because it focuses attention on the global extent of child labour and the action and the efforts that are needed to eliminate it. So what we're referring to when we talk about child labour is actually the harm to children when they're engaged in work that can be mentally, physically or morally dangerous and harmful to them. And this can often have the knock-on effect of interfering with their education because it's work that deprives them of the opportunity to attend school or impacts on their attendance due to work that is too long or too heavy for them.
Right.
So that's really what we're talking about here. Because obviously not all forms of work are harmful. You know, we recognise that for some young people, particularly kind of in their latter sort of teenage years,
Sure.
they may actually benefit from being, appropriately and economically active.
Right.
Through light work that, can maybe be combined with school. But actually what we're talking about when we talk about child labour is that really hazardous, harmful type of labour.
I see. And so I hate to talk about this in numbers, but I'm sure our listeners will get a better grasp. So do we have any type of figure as to how many children are being exploited by this type of labor all around the world right now?
Sadly, yes. So Save the Children recently put out our Global Childhood Report, which is where we look at 8 major indicators that end childhood, which of course include child labour. So more than 152 million girls and boys are currently engaged in child labour around the world right now. So to put that perhaps into more relatable kind of terms, that's 1 in 10 children around the world right now who are engaged in child labour. And a country made up of only child labourers would be the world's 9th largest country.
Yes.
And of particular concern to us is the number of very young children who are working. So that's children who are aged between 5 and 12 years old. There are around 73 million children of that age, between 5 and 12 years old, working right now. And that's really worrying because they're the most vulnerable to abuse in the workplace and also having their schoolwork and their attendance at school compromised.
I see. Well, to also put, to give our listeners more details about some of the plights, what are some of the worst cases or scenarios of child labor? What would you define as the most dreadful cases of child labor? Absolutely.
So it's the kind of intersection of work that can be physically and morally harmful to children. So some of the worst examples that we see include slavery, forced and bonded work, children who have been trafficked into working in other countries, children who are forced to work in illegal activities, and also children who are forced into recruitment in armed conflicts. That's actually defined as child labour as well.
Right.
So, yes, child soldiers who are forced into conflicts. So those are some of the very worst cases of child labour that we see.
Yes. So in terms of child labor, what is the biggest problem? You've already mentioned some of the really serious cases. Overall, what do you think the biggest problem is? Is it kind of this indifference by people who just don't care enough? Or what do you think it is?
I think the problem is that it's an incredibly complex issue.
Yes.
And there is kind of no one real easy fix. So I think a lack of awareness of children's rights, particularly when it comes to child labour, the appropriate age for children to kind of engage in non-harmful work, and also appropriate levels that children can perhaps be involved in work and have it impact them in a positive way.
Right.
I think society is tackling those kinds of issues is really one of the biggest problems that we face.
Right. Well, you mentioned a term that I want to focus on, children's rights. Some people might say, well, do children have rights? And of course, others might say, absolutely they do. What would you define as children's rights?
Well, children's rights are actually defined by the Convention on Children's Rights, which Save the Children's founder, Eglantine Jebb, helped to draft. So there's actually a pretty clearly laid out kind of set of rules and regulations around what child rights are. They've been established for many decades. And they're recognised by the UN. And it's the basis of a lot of international humanitarian law. So I appreciate there may be not kind of everyday terms, but it was quite a special set of articles in the convention that cover all aspects of a child's life and set out what children everywhere are entitled to legally.
Yes.
So that's really what we mean when we talk about child rights.
I see. Well, I hear that in the 2019 World Children's Report, which is put out by Save the Children, this report apparently came out at the end of May. So if we had to take a look at the rankings, Singapore is ranked first, Sweden second, and then we go down. We have Republic of Korea as the 8th country in the world, being ranked as a good country to live in for children. So how are the rankings determined?
Okay, so in the Global Childhood Report, what we do is we look at 8 main areas that we define as ending childhood if a child experiences them.
Right.
So they can include things like child labour, child marriage, being displaced by conflict, being the victim of child homicide. And we look at the best available data for each country in the world, and then we put them into an index.
Yes.
So say South Korea was ranked the 8th country in the world. That meant that it attained consistently high scores across those 8 areas, and in particular for children's health and education. So for South Korea, that would mean that fewer than 5% of children die before their 5th birthday. Fewer than 5% don't have enough to eat, and fewer than 5% are out of school. Yes, so that's how we look at those rankings. Sure. And also we, on this year in particular, we looked at progress since the year 2000. Because I think it's really important to say that we do the overall ranking, but it's important to look at relative progress as well. Yes. Because progress on child rights is being made, and there are fewer child workers than there were in the year 2000. But of course, the number is still far, far too many. Yes, yes. Well, on a brighter note, I hear that this is the 100th year of the establishment of Save the Children. So, of course, thank you so much for doing such a great job with this organization. Can you tell us what the organization, are doing in terms of certain things to commemorate this, various activities for children today, or anything that you think we should be focusing on for children? Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much. We are celebrating 100 years of Save the Children. Yes. I'm sure you're aware, in South Korea, I've actually worked since the 60s, when so many children and families were left destitute after the war. Right. Our So we have our centenary campaign this year, and our main focus is going to be campaigning for and protecting and helping children to thrive who are the most marginalised and most excluded. So we're really focusing on reaching those children who society has, for whatever reason, really, really marginalised and who are the most desperate for our help. We are also focusing very much on helping children around the world who are caught in and fleeing conflict.
Yes.
Because that is absolutely urgent and needs attention. Very sadly, the number of children caught in conflicts has increased enormously over the last 20 years. And as conflicts are fought less on battlefields away from where people live, and more in towns and cities, more and more children need our help to recover and to thrive long term into adulthood. So that's our main focus for our 100-year campaign.
And actually, I want to ask you one final question. As lay people, how can we contribute to not just talking about the plight of children, about marginalized children? Is there anything we can do to help on a personal level?
Yes, absolutely. Please do. There are so many things that anybody can do to help children. You can go on to Save the Children's social media channels. There's lots of information on there about how to advocate for child rights, how to get in touch with your political representatives all around the world, not just in South Korea.
Yes.
So you can be an individual voice that's part of something much bigger that's speaking up for children.
Yes.
And of course, you can always get involved yourself. We have thousands of dedicated volunteers all around the world who are helping us to work on behalf of children. So there's lots that anybody can do to get involved.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today and shedding light onto this World Day Against Child Labor. Thanks once again.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me.
Once again, this was Davina Hagan, who is a spokesperson for Save the Children, as we are commemorating this day, this World Day Against Child Labor. And with that, we're going to take a short break. This is